On This Week in Enterprise Tech, new privacy rules for ISPs, Google goes urban and wireless, China's got the fastest supercomputer, and our first ever How to Spend Your Budget Surplus episode of TWiET. TWiET on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is TWiET.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is TWiET. This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 195, recorded June 24th, 2016. How to spend your budget surplus. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Atlassian. Unleash your team's potential with collaborative software tools like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Visit Atlassian.com to learn more. Welcome to TWiET. This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I don't guide you by myself. In fact, this time we've got a full cast of characters, all three co-hosts, starting with Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii. Brian, last time I checked, it was getting up into the 90s, high 90s in Hawaii. I'm sure it's quite nice, yes?
Actually, today it's in the mid 80s, and the humidity is finally coming down, which is perfect for the Honolulu Mini Maker Fair that's tomorrow from noon to 5 at Iolani School. We'll
talk about that more, but if you are a maker, if you've got hankering to be a maker, and you live in Hawaii, that is a absolute must-attend. Speaking of must-attends, this next gentleman runs a radio show that you must listen to, Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, you're on the other side of the United States. Hopefully it's nice over there, too. Are you preparing for a maker fair?
Well, to take those in order, we are, in fact, in the mid-90s here, and I'd say upper 80s in terms of humidity. So it's your basic early summer Florida, which is just the way we like it. As for maker fairs, the big Orlando Maker Fair has put out the call for exhibitors, and we're actually looking at maybe answering that call. Beautiful Carol and myself. So we might not be simply covering it, but actually exhibiting it, the Orlando Maker Fair, which is moving to a new venue this year, moving to the Central Florida Fairgrounds to give it more space.
Well, how about that? The TWiET Ride is getting all makery. Speaking of getting all makery, the last leg of the enterprise milking stool is none other than Mr. Lou Maresca. He's a senior lead at Microsoft. Lou, good to have you back, my friend. And I'm assuming things in the Pacific Northwest are doing just fine.
Yeah, doing great, doing great. Our weather's not so great. We're a little cool, 60 degrees and rainy, but hey, everything else is going good.
Well, gentlemen, we've got a treat for our audience. Today is kind of a special midsummer break. We know that this is the last week before the end of fiscal year 2015-2016. There's going to be a lot of IT managers out there who are looking at their budgets, realizing that they've got a little bit of cash left in a use it or lose it situation. So we're going to show you how to use it. But before we do that, let's go ahead and jump into the blips. This first one is, well, a little bittersweet. There's no denying that Tom Wheeler's turn at the top of the FCC has surprised the industry pundits. Coming from a cable background, many thought that he was going to be a rubber-stamped chairman giving away consumer rights and protections to his cable cronies, which is exactly why he has won scores of converts with his pushes for net neutrality, competition at the top of telephone poles, a big increase in the availability of wireless spectrum, and now new privacy rules for ISPs. His latest windmill to tilt is the oft-criticized but almost never remediated opt-out policies related to ISPs selling their customers' data to third parties. Our ISPs can collect data ranging from sites visited to apps used to location and communication patterns that can be correlated to medical conditions, vacation times, and the ripeness of a customer to buy certain products, which is why the selling of that information to interested parties is big business. Now, all ISPs have an opt-out option, but it's almost impossible to find and invoke. Now, if Chairman Wheeler gets his way, the FCC will implement the privacy requirements of Section 222 of the Communications Act. that would change the default policy from opt-out to opt-in. In other words, your ISP wouldn't be able to sell your data unless you explicitly agreed to allow them to do so. This is a fight that has been going on for almost 2 decades, and of course the ISPs are fighting back with claims that an opt-out policy would, quote, not protect consumers and destroy competition, end quote. But as that's exactly what they said about net neutrality and the Communications Act and the breakup of Ma Bell, perhaps this is the year that the ISPs have to choose between having us as their customers or their products.
The IoT will be $357 billion big by 2018. According to an IDC report, Internet of Things revenue is expected to soar 16.1% by 2019 as U.S. companies look to leverage the technology that provides connected data sharing to remote task-oriented capabilities. In the years leading up to 2019, IDC says IoT revenue is expected to climb to $357 billion. The revenue growth will be led by in-store contextualized marketing, connected vehicles, and insurance telematics. They'll be joined by remote health management, smart grid electricity use, and smart homes. The 3 industries expected to pony up the largest IoT investments this year include manufacturing, transportation, and the cross-industry segment. Now, if you're wondering, the cross-industry segment represents IoT uses that are common to more than one industry, and boy howdy, there are a lot of those.
Instead of targeting people with emails about relatives needing emergency funds, piracy phishing scammers found a new, more convincing avenue for striking fear into families by saying they downloaded movies illegally through torrents. Scammers route fake takedown notices through ISPs, spoofing Lionsgate and other content-producing companies, asking for settlement demand of $150 or more to be paid to a collections company called IP Echelon. ISPs treat them as legitimate takedown notices and forward it on to their customers from their official ISP's email address from their network security team. This is essentially legitimizing the takedown notice, making it hard for the end user to differentiate from the fake ones and the real ones. Multiple Cox customers have reported this scam and their notices. Multiple ISPs, including Cox, had previously refused to pass on such notices, even the real ones, but had to reverse their policy due to several court cases. Security experts are asking that ISPs start using PGP signature verification going forward around the takedown notices to ensure validity.
Well, a new flash SSD optimized file system called APFS is spotted in the MacOS Sierra release. Announced at WWDC keynote, Apple is getting ready to release a new file system dubbed APFS that's optimized for flash/SSD storage systems as a replacement for the aging HFS Plus file system. While it's unsure if it's an Apple invention or a modification of existing flash file systems, many actually had hoped for ZFS, but now for the predictions that are in that it's an Apple source system.
The world's fastest supercomputer is Chinese from top to bottom. The latest Top 500 supercomputer list, released June 20th, marks 2 notable firsts. It's the first time ever the #1 supercomputer on the list was made entirely of components manufactured in China, and it's the first time the U.S. doesn't have the greatest number of supercomputer sites on the top 500. The #1 computer on the list, the Sunway TaihuLight, is located at the National Supercomputing Center in Wuxi, China, and it's the fastest supercomputer by a wide margin, with a top processing speed of 125,435.9 teraflops per second, or 125 petaflops. The Sunway TaihuLight is almost 3 times as fast as the second fastest computer, the Tianhe 2. The U.S. shows up at #3 with Titan, a Cray XK7 located at the DOE SC Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. The systems just keep getting bigger. The Wuxi-based Sunway TaihuLight has 10.5 million cores, more than 3 times as many as its nearest competitor, along with more than 1.3 petabytes of memory. The U.S., well, it is not expected to have a machine challenging the Chinese champion for at least 4 years.
Scott and Julie Broussard crowdfunded their dream on Indiegogo back in 2014 and raised almost $2.3 million to develop a product called Solar Roadways, where they can produce photovoltaic pavers that can be placed on a road to collect solar energy. The Missouri Department of Transportation is teaming up with Solar Roadways to take a portion of the historic Route 66 and make it more than just a tourist road. Solar Roadways pavers can not only harness energy from the sun, but they can also provide LED lighting along the road and replace lines and signage. The technology allows for cheap repairs due to its modular design, and the pavers are proven to be durable to all types of weather conditions. Only time will tell to prove out the technology, but other than minor applications of this product have shown that it's quite useful.
Google is making it easier for people to use two-factor authentication. The gist is you can now set up Google 2FA with a push prompt to authenticate against the Google credential system. So instead of requiring you set up Google Authenticator on your mobile device to generate a 6-digit code or use a dongle like Yubico, the system pops up a Google authentication window on your iOS or Android device as a second factor and is calling it Google Prompt. In its Google Prompt in its security section, while the jury is still out on just how secure this actually is, it does make it a whole lot easier to use 2FA, and I have actually started trying it. Other than being a little slow, it's not so bad.
Google Fiber has been the broadband boogeyman for incumbent ISPs for many, many years. With ridiculous speeds, reasonable pricing, and general use policies, Google has scared the likes of AT&T and Comcast into dropping their prices, increasing their offerings, and generally pressuring them into dealing with competition. Well, grab the popcorn because now Google Fiber is going big city and wireless. Yesterday, Google Fiber announced that they are acquiring urban metro Ethernet ISP Webpass. Headquartered in San Francisco, Webpass also has operations around the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as San Diego, Miami, Coral Gables, Miami Beach, Chicago, and Boston. Webpass offers 10 meg to 1 gig business connections and 100 meg to 1 gig residential. While this acquisition dramatically increases Google Fiber's urban footprint, perhaps equally important is the short-range 3.5 gigahertz wireless test that Google performed in April in Kansas City. Combining that wireless tech with their new reach might be the one-two punch that the ISPs have been dreading. Personally, living in a part of San Francisco that has exactly no affordable high-speed internet, I'd love to talk to anyone with Google Fiber who needs a place to store their extra bandwidth. Well, that does it for the blips. Let's go ahead and jump into our special section. That's right. It's the fiscal year-end buyer's guide. We do this every once on TWiET because aside from being hosts and co-hosts of the show, we're also tech heads. We love the tech that we get to play with, be it for business, for personal use, and we want to share some of it with you. We know that we are at the end of June, the end of fiscal year 2015-2016, and many of us have budgets that do not roll over. So, what can you spend your cash on that will help you in the future of your IT work? Cheebert, I'm going to start off, but you were the one who first suggested this. You were the one who thought that a sort of year-end buyer's guide would be really good for our audience. What exactly inspired you to suggest this as an episode for TWiET?
Actually, it was one of my InfoWorld articles that became a slideshow, and apparently has been wildly successful because the magazine's actually asking me for more.
How about that? So let's see if we can get a little bit of the same traction here on TWiET. Now, yes, let's go on a shopping spree, although I'm not sure why there's a fish in that. I've got a new TD, and he's really big into aquatic life. This is not aquatic. This is the Synology DS1515 Plus. Actually, if you go to the overhead shot, let me see if I can get this in here. Yeah. Oh, this is a big bugger. This is a 5-bay NAS from Synology. Now, it's got all the stuff that you would expect from a NAS. It's hot swap. It uses SATA drives. It's actually quite nice. Dual fans, so you're not going to accidentally cook your drives. It has 4 gigabit Ethernet ports. It has 4 USB 3.0 ports, 2 eSATA ports, and it's also chainable to another chassis, so you could actually add another 5 drives if you wanted this to be truly big. By the way, those gigabit ports are also bondable, so you can get some ridiculously fast transfers out of this thing. Best part, it starts at $700 diskless. So if you're one of these IT admins who has a bunch of drives hanging around your office, if you've got $700 left, you can get one of these. Now, the hardware's nice, But what really gets me excited is the software, DSM, Disk Station Manager. And Kevin, if you go to my computer here, I've actually got the operating system for this array is up. So this is what Synology DSM looks like. One of the things I absolutely love about this is the fact that it's not just a NAS box. So this can be everything from a media server to a cloud station, to a download station. They've got, you can make it a network video recorder. And then you can do things like adding modules. Like, for example, let's say I wanted to run a VPN server on this thing. I would just search for it inside of this handy dandy little search field, click install. It installs the module, and then it's ready. This is quite possibly the easiest NAS I've ever used. And I love the expanded functionality. Cheebert, you've played with a couple of Synology products, right?
Oh, you bet. In fact, I'm actually running Docker and doing the Ubiquiti Unify management tool in the Docker station.
Yeah, and I should mention, by the way, the other reason why I really like this is it runs Docker. So this will run any Docker container that you have. It's actually got a lot of horsepower. So if you've been wanting to experiment with running Docker containers on headless boxes, this is a headless box. Now, it does do things like firewall. You could set this up to be your firewall and your router and all those other things. I actually prefer to have it behind all my security. This is sort of my private box. It also supports Active Directory authentication. So if you want to make this part of your forest and have it inherit all of the security permissions of your enterprise, it will do that just fine. It supports VLANs. So if you want to segment out your network and have only certain traffic running to your NAS, it will do that as well. Now, there are people who will look at the Synology, say, 2 drive stations, and they'll say it runs the same version of DSM, which is very true. But what you get with the larger version like this, the 1515 Plus, is you get all that enterprise goodness, the extra firepower, so it will run all those additional features, more drives, the expandability to another chassis. I tell you, for my money, if I had about $1,000, this would be the one thing that I picked up, because even if it only sits on my desktop, I'm going to be very happy. And if I need to hook it up to my network to give people a place to dump files or maybe to expand the functionality of that network, this does just fine. What do you think about that? Anyone else want one of these? Because I can always reach out to Synology.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Say, okay. That's how we know. That's how we know. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Lou, you've got something a little interesting.
Yeah, I got something kind of practical. Most IT pros who are prone to go lay cable or do cable management, whether around a data center or if it's around a manufacturing plant or whatnot, they tend to want to know how long the cable needs to be. And I've seen everything from people taking tape measures out to those little rolly devices that the realtors used to use. And so this is actually something useful. I have several people who are in the data center world and they work in the data centers, and they say that they wouldn't go without their laser measurement system. And this is the Bosch GLR 500. It's a laser measurer. It could go up to about 500 feet. It's backlit. It has very, very fast response times, so you can measure in different angles very, very quickly. There are other units like the Leica Disto, which runs you about $500. It'll do over 500 feet. But again, it's got a little bit of bells and whistles that you don't necessarily need. This guy will get what you need to do, and it'll be very fast, very useful, and again, very practical.
Very simple tool, but I think everyone can sympathize with needing some exact measurements. So that was the Bosch. Bosch? Is it Bosch or Bosch? I've always said Bosch.
It's Bosch.
They say Bosch.
Bosch. Okay, Bosch GLR 500 laser measuring. It's what, 288 or so when it is available?
$298, yeah.
All right. Curtis, you've got a little something else that's not networking or tool related.
Yeah, because more and more we know that people are communicating in a business environment through video. And as those of us who work in video know, one of the main things that separates good video from bad video is the audio. Now, the folks at iClip do a lot of audio tools for mobile platforms. If you want to do great audio on your iPhone, your Android phone, your tablet, they've got you covered. And they've just come out with a new thing called the iClip AV. Now, at first glance, this looks like just another pistol grip mount for your iPhone, something to give you a little more stability. And it does that. But the thing that separates this is over in that handle, there are two AA batteries, and those support an XLR microphone input and phantom power. So you can have a genuine professional quality microphone that you hook to your in this case iPhone to give you great quality audio while you're shooting your video. And what you can barely see in this image is that it even has a little mounting plate. So if you want to do a little wireless mic, you can put a wireless lav mic on someone's collar, have the receiver here, plug it into the XLR, bring it back into the input of your smartphone, and have really great professional quality audio to go with your video. And that means that your intended audience, whether it's just your team members or all of your users or a group of partners, can actually understand what you're saying, and that goes a long way. This happens for about $179. This is where I would spend some money if I had a little extra to throw around.
Interesting. I don't know if I need something like that, but I think I want something like that.
I understand that
Story of my
completely.
life.
Now, wait. Okay, Cheebert, I can see you in the preview screen. You're holding something up here. Well, we've had this on the show before, right? What is this?
Yes, we have. And this is one of the things that I tell a lot of people. This is what you use your year and money on. Get a bunch of these. They're $3.99. This one will actually even tell you the length of the cable. It'll still send all the test data up to the cloud. You can actually set it up using any HTML5 browser. So your iPhone, your iPad, your Android, whatever's. And set, what it's going to ping, what it's going to try and do a web or FTP or whatever's. This one's in Fluke Yellow, but Fluke Networks is now owned by NetScout. So hopefully in a near future show, we're going to have the Fluke Networks people talking, and hopefully I'll have one that's been Shrekified. All
right. So tell me about this, because this Sprinter, it's different than the tools that we use traditionally at, say, Interrupt, because the old tools always had their own screen and they could do everything in box. This is really designed to be connected to the internet, correct?
That is very correct. It can be used without an internet connection. In fact, we actually do use these on Interrupt now. We have a $299 Link Sprinter 200, $199 Link Sprinter 200, a $299 100, then the 200, 300. They're basically $100 each. The 100 does not have a Wi-Fi. It's designed just to throw it up into the cloud. The 200 has a Wi-Fi, but it doesn't have the cable measurement. The 300 has all of the above, and it's great. It's also a big departure for Fluke Networks in that it's available on Amazon. It's not through their normal channels, and it uses just a couple of AA batteries. And it is a very good network tester and super simple to use, something that I'll throw in my toolkit. And at the end of the year, I'm probably going to buy a couple more for the students.
I was not sold on the concept the first time I saw it, just because I thought, oh man, the other tools I have in my hand can give me so much more information immediately. But if you've ever done something where you're deploying a lot of drops or you're testing a lot of links, there is something kind of nice about having that all neatly stored in the cloud so you can just rummage through it later on. That becomes your documentation. So if you...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can have the high school kid that's your intern just going around, plugging it in. It'll tell you not only if the link is good, but it'll also pull out some of the information, like what port you're on what switch, how's the switch named, and it'll throw it up. The intern doesn't need to know this stuff, but the guy with the skill set or the girl with the skill set can be back looking at the cloud interface and going, oh, okay, well, this is, it'll help you do the cataloging inventory so that you know whether or not your SNMP configurations are correct. So that way Past Solutions knows what to look at. And when it reports that it's a broken cable, it tells you the correct port. So nice tool for that.
There we go. Fluke, the NetScout Link Sprinter. Actually, do you think they're going to keep calling it Fluke, or will NetScout take over entirely?
It's going to be not only changing from yellow to NetScout green, and it's still going to be called the Link Sprinter. And I'm pretty sure Fluke Networks on that is going to go away, and it's going to be a NetScout Link Sprinter.
Oh, but Fluke,
yeah,
actually,
I know.
Then my next product is also a Fluke. Now, we did talk on this show a long time ago. We've all talked about on Know-How about the importance of cleaning your fiber. Cheebert, you know this more than me. What are some of your favorite dirty fiber stories?
Well, when 100 gig first came out, 10 gig first came out, the X2 optics, the cartridges were really expensive. I think they're like $7 or $8 grand each. And someone went and just grabbed the cable right off the shelf. Didn't have any caps. They didn't clean it. They didn't inspect it. They plugged it in. And the concrete dust is actually a lot of shards. It looks like spikes under the microscope. And they shoved that in and spiked the optics. And we lost a $7,000 10 gig interface. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. And the other problem is a lot of people don't realize that those dust caps aren't really good at keeping dust out.
That actually surprised me. I thought as long as I recap it, it'll be okay. No, doesn't work.
One of the demos I do in my fiber class is I'll leave an uncapped fiber on the desk and say, okay, we're going to go to lunch. By the time we come back to lunch, I said, okay, let's go put it under the microscope. Nobody's touched it for the hour that we've been at lunch, and they'll be staggered at how much junk is just drifted in and landed on the end of the fiber.
Well, that's why I asked our friends over at Fluke, now NetScout, to send me some of these. These are the fiber cleaners, incredibly important if you're going to be doing any sort of fiber management, any sort of fiber repatching. Like Cheebert said, just trust that the minute you pull something out of its socket, out of its cap, it's going to be covered in dust, it's going to have grease, and if you jam it into whatever port you're plugging it into, be it a tap or a switch, an SFP, you're going to be putting that oil directly onto the fiber end, which is a bad, bad thing. Now, I will show you in just a bit how this works, but before we do that, I want to jump back into the past. One of my favorite videos from Interop was when we showed people the importance of keeping their fiber clean.
Hi, I'm Tyler Vanderplug from JDSU, and today we're here at Interop and we're building this very high bandwidth network. And one of the biggest things that we're paying attention to today is making sure that all of our fiber connections are in pristine condition and clean enough to transfer the data from each server to server or to each cabinet. And so I wanted to walk through one of the products that we're using in doing this and how it makes it a lot easier. Around my neck here I have what we call our Essential Fiber Toolkit from JDSU. It features our popular HP3 series integrated system, which combines 3 tools in one, actually. It includes a microscope for inspecting the patch cords, which I'll do in a moment. Also a second microscope for inspecting the connector behind the bulkhead. And it also includes an integrated power meter. And there's other tools that included with it, such as a visual fault locator, cleaning tools, and things of that nature. So I'd like to walk through just the process of how this is used right here on an actual system that's being used on the Interop floor. We'll start off by checking our test leads on one of our patch cords. So I'll turn on my device, and I have my integrated patch cord microscope here. So I'll check that. I'll check the first connector, and it's pretty dirty. So right next to my microscope, I have an integrated cleaner. Give that a click and re-inspect that. Now I've validated that that end is clean, so I can actually move it over here to my power meter port. Whether I'm using my power meter or not, I can put it there because it's a nice safe place to park that connector when you're not using it. Check my other end. This one as well is pretty dirty, so I'll give that a clean. Now that's a lot better. So now both of these ends are ready to go. But before I connect those, I want to make sure that the connector behind the bulkhead port is also clean. I'm now going to transition over to my probe microscope, which allows me to inspect behind the bulkhead port. I press a button on my display here. That activates the probe. I'll go ahead and inspect that in here. Get that into focus. And that one is pretty dirty. I'm going to check both at the same time. And both of them are pretty dirty. So my cleaning tool, the same device that I used to clean the patch cord ends, I can also use to clean behind the bulkhead. I just remove the cap. Give that a few clicks in there. And now I'm going to re-inspect. Now I've confirmed that both my patch cord side and the connectors behind the bulkhead are clean. So I can move ahead and actually connect those. Now I need to plug in the other side. Now on this particular application, that side used an SC connector. On the other side is using an LC connector. So in order to inspect this one and clean it, I just need to change the adapters. This one here was meant for a universal 2.5 interface. I'm going to put on a different adapter for a 1.25 interface, which is what you'll usually see on an LC ferrule. Now I need to do the same with my bulkhead. I had an SC tip on there for inspecting the SC port. I'm going to change that out to an LC tip instead. Put that on there and thread that. Now I'm all ready to go to inspect the LC patch cords and the ports behind there. So I go ahead and get this into focus. Actually, both of these are in great condition, which is another good reason why you always want to inspect before you connect, because if you don't need to clean, you don't need to waste the time doing that if you've already validated that these ends are clean. So now these two ends are clean. I'm going to toggle over to activate my probe microscope. And hey, guess what? All of these ends are actually already clean. So we've validated now that these ends are clean, and we didn't even have to check them. Let's hear it for interop. We got some clean connectors here. So now I've validated that those ends are clean, so I can plug that in. And now I've connected both ends of my SC and my LC over here and made sure that every end face was perfectly clean. And remember, inspect before you connect.
Now, Chee, you have one of those, right? Because they gave me the little USB microscope thing, and I think I lost that in the interop warehouse. But you have one of the JDSU testers.
Yeah, I actually have that. I also have the USB version, and I've actually used it in several convention centers around the United States. And what's really great is that remote microscope allows me to get down into the pits on the show floors to go and inspect what's going on before I go and lose some expensive optics.
Exactly. Now, that tester is not the device that I am going to recommend, because that is a considerable amount of change. Now, if you've got the cash, I do suggest you buy one, because how do you know if it's actually clean unless you've tested it? But if you just have a tiny bit of cash left in your budget and you want to do something to make sure you're protecting your fiber plant, then you need to pick up one of these. Actually, a kit of these. We've got a link here, Kevin, if you could go to it. This is for the Fluke Fiber Cleaner. They're about $66 each. This is a 5-pack for a little over $300. But they're really, really simple. And I like to have these around my office because at the very minimum, this is how you clean your ports. This is how you clean your fiber before you insert it. It's just a really cheap insurance. Now, so if you go to the overhead shot here, this is a NetOptics tap, one of the ones I've kept in production for a while. I can uncap this, but as Chee said, that doesn't guarantee that this is clean. Just because it had a cap in there doesn't mean it has it doesn't have a lot of dust. It doesn't mean that there wasn't oil on the cap before I put it in. So I just removed the protective end here. And this is a ratchet style. So you just insert it into the port and you punch it a few times. And every time you punch it, you can hear it. So it's ratcheting the cleaning cloth over the top of that fiber end. I just give it a couple of punches. I've now cleaned that. I've cleaned that end so that when I do insert my fiber, I'm not going to jam any oil or any dust down into that fiber end. People will say, well, you're paying $60 for a cleaner. No, you're paying $60 so that you don't destroy $10,000 worth of hardware. So if you've got some budget, pick yourself up a 5 or a 10 pack of these. You'll never go wrong with these. These will never be wasted. You will always find a use for them. And this is probably the most practical product that I'm going to offer during this roundup. How about that? Lou, let's go over to you. You've got some serious geek lust in this next one. Tell me about it.
Absolutely. So this is actually a little near and dear to my heart because I go to lots of conferences and meeting rooms and have conference calls and do trainings over the phone and over link and so on. And it's Skype for business. And so I know that, when you use these things, you tend to either sound like you're in a wind tunnel or, it's not clear, or people talk across the room and you can't hear them, and it just kind of gets old. This thing, the Polycom release Real Presence Trio 8800 conference hub, it's around $900, but this thing has unbelievable audio quality. It's kind of like you're getting a Bose system for conference rooms. It's not only a sleek design, it's got future-proof technology in it. It's basically just an ultra monitor device for your conference room. So if you like me, you know that you want the HD audio sound in the conference room. You want the ability. It's actually got a 5-inch LCD display on it. It's touchscreen. It has Bluetooth. It's SIP compatible, so also VoIP compatible. You can pair your laptop and your tablet over Bluetooth. You can also tap your NFC mobile phone against it. You can do it over USB, and you can even connect to it over network, over Ethernet. It's also got a really interesting technology. Now, a lot of these noise canceling units, they have the ability to noise cancel, but this thing has what they call noise block. And what it does is it'll listen and it'll determine, hey, I hear cars outside, or I hear sirens or something, and it actually can pinpoint that piece of noise and just completely block it out. And so then you'll actually be talking and the noise will just disappear. It's really kind of cool. Another cool thing about it is it does have the ability for these little satellite speakers, and so you can stretch them out and plug them in. They're a little extra money, but you can plug them in and can stretch them out across the entire conference room. And when somebody's talking on one of those units, it'll actually mute the other units. So it's a very, very good unit. And it's future-proof. So you can not only upgrade the unit going forward, but it gives you the ability to not only do voice and video against it as well. So you can attach a video unit and your laptop and so on if you're not doing it over something like a Skype service or so on. So it can actually handle that as well. So again, it's about $900, but again, for a unit like this, that's actually cheap. So it's night and day when you use this unit comparably to some of the other units I've used in the past.
Nice. And you know what? I've got a soft spot. I've got a soft spot in my heart for them. Chee, were they probably the longest running sponsor of Interop VoIP before the other vendors came in, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Mitch is a very long time member of the InteropNet team and have brought all kinds of really cool things. I'm actually quite fond of the 802.11a wireless VoIP phones. I still use them. They still work.
Actually, we've got Polycom phones all around here. The little wireless handsets that we use with our VoIP trunk. But let's move on, because the next one is something that it's moving a little bit past the stereotypical enterprisey type devices into something that people will really, really enjoy. Curtis, iPad Pro for enterprise work?
Not just the iPad Pro, but the 12-inch iPad Pro, the big one. And I'll tell you why. When you look at the companies that are seriously into enterprise software, companies like IBM and SAP, they are putting out SDKs specifically for iOS. And if you go to the conferences that these companies run, you see lots and lots of these large pad devices, these large tablet devices in the hands of executives, managers, people who are in charge of making the programs happen and making business decisions. So if I've got to support this platform for my executives, I want to have one myself to understand my users and to see why they're so excited. I've seen these. They're gorgeous, if a little unwieldy to carry around under your arm all the time. And so if I had a little bit of extra money, call it $1,000 in my budget, I would look at one of the big iPad Pros.
Although I've got Alex Gumpel, his eyes are boring into the back of my head, saying, hey, if you want an enterprise tablet, he does have a Surface Pro. Yeah? No? See?
When it comes to enterprise software, and this is a question that I heard being put to the CEO of SAP just a couple of months ago, they still feel that in the enterprise, the iOS devices are the biggest platform in place, and that's where they are making a significant bet. I think it has a lot to do with market penetration, and I know we're going to get people who say, what about Android? Android sells more than iOS. Yes, if you put all of the iOS or all of the Android flavors together, they do. But many, many, many executives, many enterprise IT people hate Android because there are so many flavors. One flavor of iOS, they can control it, the tools are there. So this is really a big enterprise platform for now.
All right, I'll trust you on that. But let's go ahead and move on to something else. Let's not talk about tablets. Instead, let's talk about something that Chee has very close to his heart, and that is displaying multiple bits of content on multiple screens in multiple combinations. Chee, you were the one who first brought this device into the TWiET Riot. I actually ordered one myself. I'm still waiting for it, but I have high hopes for it. Tell me about the screens.
Well, one, I will go and twist some arms and see if they can get you your unit faster. They are starting to ship their consumer version, which is cool. I have the Pro version. Right now, it basically allows me to hook up a single HDMI monitor or a 4K if you'd like, and up to 4 HDMI inputs. They also sell a 2 input version. But what's cool is the application on my iPad mini, I can actually live move the video windows around. I can also bring up templates so that I can create, in essence, a video wall. So when I use it for testing, I will actually throw up onto my desktop monitor either my laptop or something I'm testing, a Raspberry Pi, or whatever. It's originally targeted at gamers, being able to have multiple people gaming side by side, being able to have a web page up and being able to go and look at, say, like scores and things like that. There's actually also some examples where you can actually bring up special screens that are, shall we say, it's easy to get a Twitter feed up there, easy to get an RSS feed, things like that. It's a really great system. It's super fast. So far, I haven't managed to break anything. It has a custom FPGA on there. And the cool thing is even though it's not available yet, they keep saying someday in the future, they'll have a unit that will flip it around. So instead of having one monitor and 4 sources, they're talking about having 1 source and 4 monitors to be able to go and tile multiple monitors.
Right.
They are not super cheap. Sorry, Java man. The low end, I think, is just barely under $1,000. And if you go into the commercial version, which has a lot of encryption, logins, lots of other things, a metal case instead of a plastic case. So it's designed to be able to go to trade shows and so forth. That gets up into about $6-7 range.
Right. But this one, I remember because I made the mistake of buying the super fancy gamer edition with the anodized case, which is what's taking so long. But I also got, I paid $400 and I get a 4 input to the single display, but I can also stream directly from the box. I see this as being sort of the poor man's TriCaster, which is phenomenal. If I could get even a little bit of functionality where I could mix inputs and switch back and forth between them and then stream it out to YouTube Live, yes, absolutely worth it.
Yeah, they actually also now support Facebook Live or whatever Facebook calls it, in addition to Ustream.
Well, that's the advantage of using a custom piece of silicone because They don't have to design it around a general purpose CPU. It only does image processing, and it does it incredibly well and incredibly quickly, and for a whole heck of a lot less money than you would expect. All right, let's move on. I do want to take a look at, I have an Acer Business Chromebook. Before we do that, Lou, tell me a little bit about your USB monitor, because it's the same one that I love.
Absolutely. So I travel a lot. I always bring my laptop with me, and so it's one of those things that, you know, I'm kind of a I don't know, I'm a monitor snob, I guess you can call it. I have right in front of me right now, I have 3 massive monitors. At work, I have 5 monitors, and so when I'm on a laptop, I feel constricted. So this particular thing, even though again a practical thing, I would almost get maybe more than one of these things. It's the Asus MB169B Plus. There's the 168 unit that I used to have as well. This one's is externally powered by USB 3.0. It's about $179. It's an IPS display. It's 15 inches. It has a 1920 by 1080 resolution and 220 brightness. It was actually a little bit brighter than the last unit. And it's got 700:1 contrast ratio, and it's just slightly over 2 pounds. And it actually comes with a case that lets you kind of angle it up so that you can. Oh, there you go. There you go. Is that that unit? Nice. So yeah, so it's pretty thin, and you can in fact, it just slides right in with my laptop. And when I pull it out side by side, I can basically do multi-screens, and I can have code on one screen and my rendering on another. It makes it very, very useful. And you know, you can, with that 179, you could buy 50 of those things. So for different people. So I think it's definitely useful for people who travel, want to do video editing and that kind of type of thing as well.
I absolutely love mine. I don't go anywhere without this device because, like you, I'm not a monitor snob, but I think I've passed that point where I can work on a single monitor. It just doesn't feel right. I always like to have multiple windows open so I can drag and drop information. So yeah, I'm like you. I need my second monitor. Now, what's the price on? Oh, by the way, they have a new version of that does IPS. It's 109. It's like $20 more. But if you're going to pick one of these up, the IPS version is much brighter and it's nice. It's nice,
that's the one. That's this one. This the 179 is the IPS one.
Gotta love it. All right, Cheeber, tell me about your wireless dongle. I had the Microsoft adapter not too long ago. I was really impressed by that. Is this a better one?
I've tried lots and lots and lots of different things. What I really and truly wanted was I wanted something that was cross-platform, that I could share my entire desktop, and that's what this AirTame does. The problem is it took quite a while to get delivered, but now I'm actually seriously thinking about using some of my year-end money to go buy one of their 3-packs, because they now have a discounted 3-pack. Now, the really cool thing is some of the dongles I've played with in the past, if you manage to bork them, you're lost. You have to send it back and you have to reflash it because it's, you know, something. This is actually a custom Raspberry Pi. And so the tech support guys, I managed to wedge my my unit. They said just pop the back off, pop out the micro SD card. They ran me through Pi Baker, sent me the new flash image, flashed it. Life is good. My AirTame is great. Now, it also has the ability to have kind of a kiosk mode, so you can put up web pages. It doesn't support Flash, but it will run HTML5 and things like that. You can share the desktop, Mac or Windows. You can send streaming video, you know, like YouTube and so forth, from your tablet or your phone. And it's pretty cheap. It's very easy to travel with. And my personal opinion, it does just as good a job at sharing my desktop as my Apple TV.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, I know that we all have a couple more products we really want to play with, but unfortunately, we've been having too much fun. We've run a little bit long in this segment, and we have a surprise for our audience, because if you want to know what to spend your surplus cash on, I really, really would look at Pwnie Express. We're going to be bringing in Yolonda Smith from Pwnie Express in just a bit to show us one of their solutions. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Now, you probably know this, but every great achievement has an idea and a team behind it. Of course, you've got to have the idea. You have to have the inspiration. You have to have the vision to create whatever it is that you're going to create. The mapping of the human genome, the mastering of 3D printing, the next great spacecraft. They all have ideas behind them, but they also have teams. Now, if you want the formula for success, it's quite simple. Have a great idea, have a great team, give them what they need to succeed, and then get out of the way. That's exactly what you can do with Atlassian. Now, we've been using Atlassian at TWiET for quite a while as a vital piece of our creative process. Our engineering team uses their product Confluence to document equipment and work process, to share results and keep the team on the same page of every project. Now, everybody can see ideas and comment on a timeline, so not only do we know where the project is headed, but we know where it's been, which sometimes is just as important. With Jira, we get clear and concise task management that lets us see who was assigned what and when. It also lets us manage vendors and organize our constantly growing pile of tasks, which would otherwise be overwhelming. HipChat, which is the product that I think people are most aware of, ties everything together from event planning to DevOps to interdepartmental communications with real-time IM and video on any of our devices. And Bitbucket lets us share, review, and improve our code in real time. Bottom line, all of these tools turn a good team into a great team. From startups to 10,000-seat enterprises, Atlassian makes great ideas real. Now, here's what we want you to do. We want you to support your team. We want you to grow your next great idea with Atlassian. Just visit Atlassian.com and see how Jira, Confluence, HipChat, and Bitbucket give your team everything they need to organize, discuss, and complete shared work. Atlassian, helping teams everywhere team up to create what's next. That's Atlassian.com, Atlassian.com. And we thank Atlassian for the support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's do my favorite part of the show when we welcome in our guests to give us their insight, their products, and most of all, their geeky understanding of the enterprise. We welcome Yolonda Smith from Pwnie Express to the show. Yolonda, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, for the folks playing along at home, maybe they haven't heard of Pwnie Express. Maybe they've never been to a Black Hat or a DEF CON or an Interop. Could you explain what Pwnie Express does?
Absolutely. So for those that haven't heard about Pwnie Express, shame on you. But for those that haven't heard, Pwnie Express does device threat detection in real time. So if you were looking at us from a few years ago, you remember that we were doing these Dropbox pen testing platforms where you would have something that looked very much like an air freshener or like a power strip that you could plug in, and all of a sudden someone might have owned your network. Well, as we worked with customers and as we talked to them about what their real needs were, what they told us was that actually they don't even know what's on their network. So while they could do pen testing all day and that was fun, actually what they needed to do was actually figure out what was on their network and what shouldn't be on their network that was there. And so after we started thinking about it and started thinking about, how our platform could scale and build out and really help customers to discover those things that are out there in their airspace, we came across and we developed the Pulse platform. And that's what I'm going to demo for you today.
All right. Now, the Pulse platform is, I like to think of it as Pwnie Express all grown up, because when I first heard of Pwnie Express, it was at a Black Hat DEF CON, and there were a couple of people walking around with some of the tools. You had some tablets that were sort of one-stop shop hacking devices. And those were fun, and they were very interesting and incredibly powerful. But over the last couple of years, Pwnie Express has really sort of grown into its own. It's no longer, it's not a toy. It is a security auditing tool. So tell me about Pulse.
Cool, I can do that. So you know us from our pads, Padre, and you saw that those things are running Kali Linux. But we've got these cool little sensors that, I don't know if you can see, I'm holding one up, and here I've got another one in front of me as well. That can go out into your enterprises and can actually look at the wired network and assess those ports and services that are running out on all your wired assets. We can also look at the wireless assets that are in your airspace, looking at things like Bluetooth, looking at things like encryption, figuring out if you have APs that are running at WEP or no encryption, looking at things like cellular assets as well, which is becoming a growing threat vector over time. And in doing that, we correlate all that stuff together. We pull it back to our SaaS platform. And from there, we can actually show you those devices that are in your airspace or on your network that are of concern that you need to go get them out of there.
All right, so I've got my probes. I've got the ability to deploy them where I need them, which is always important. It's not a centralized server that requires to be worked into everything, but you can put the wireless unit where you need to check up on wireless, like in a public space. You can put the wired probes in your data closets, and then they'll send everything back to. I'm assuming you have some sort of central interface.
Yep, that's Pulse, and that's actually what I've got up here on. I think it might be showing on your screen, Padre. But yeah, that's where the analytics come into play, and that's actually where all this information in terms of the threat intelligence becomes useful and active for you to actually come back and see precisely what it is that you need to go work on first. We recognize that IT and IT security folks are busy. You don't necessarily have time to drill into and look at every single thing that you want to, even though it might be fun and interesting. But what you're seeing here is the Pulse analytic platform. This is actually the main dashboard that I'm logged into. And at this point, what I'm showing you is the real-time view of every single asset that is deployed across my entire global infrastructure. What we're showing here is essentially every single asset that we've seen across our global distributed enterprise. And that's, of course, across the wire network, the wireless environment, including Bluetooth devices, as well as our cellular towers that we can see across our global environment as well. And right now, what we're showing you is sort of the real-time net new devices that are appearing on each of those interfaces. But if we wanted to really get a sense of which sensors or which corporate environments I needed to actually dig into and look at first, I can actually do that directly from here. Here you can see I've got 4 sensors deployed, spread across, the globe, for lack of a better term, actually just the United States. And from that point, I can start to pick up and say, hey, which one of these is actually my problem area? Which one of these is something that I need to go look at first? I'm going to pick the Boston office since that's where I'm sitting right now. And from here, I can actually get a lot more granular information about what is actually happening in my Boston office. One of the cool things about these sensors is that you can actually start services on them directly from the Pulse platform. And here I'm doing wired scanning. We've actually written a new service called Real-Time Wireless Discovery and Blue Hydra. So for those of you that are going to be attending DEF CON, please stop by and see us and we can talk to you in detail about what this is. But this is one of those cool things that one of our very smart developers, Rick Farina, made. And for our larger sensors, you actually have the ability to kick off open VAS vulnerability scans on an ad hoc basis as you see fit.
Oh, I love this. Can I ask you a question, Yolanda? Where is this all hosted? So are you just using a standard cloud provider, or is this all you built up the custom infrastructure?
Yeah, so we're doing this. So Amazon is our backbone. We're using AWS as our cloud backbone. But for those customers that are like, I really just need to sort of have my own my own instance, we can do a single tenant license for those folks as well.
I love this because I could see myself pre-configuring an appliance for a remote office and then just sending it to them and giving them pictures, plug it in here, and suddenly it pops up on my cloud-based UI, and I can see exactly what's going on inside that network. That is a fantastic way to do it.
And it's that dead simple. You described it perfectly, Padre. And from that point, you plug it in and it just starts cataloging and looking for things. And since you don't, at least our IT folks out there, don't have time to sort of pick apart these things, you pull that back to us and you let us do it. And then we can start to talk about really cool things like the threats. So I can see things like I think we were talking about Raspberry Pis a little bit earlier. If one of those shows up in my network, I can find that. If I wanted to find a Hack5 Pineapple, if that happened to be in my enterprise, I'd see that too. And in fact, the one I just picked out is actually on our network. It's got, at least it was at a certain point, it's got an IP address associated with it. And from that point, I can drill in and see even more information about that particular asset, namely that it was serving SSH. It looks like it had DNS open, and it was also operating as a web server during that period of time that it was online. Whoever turned it on, it looks like they recognized that they were not doing the right thing, and they very quickly pulled it off the network because we only saw it for a blip of time, and then it went away after that. As I go back, though, and if I want to just see the things that are actually on my network, or if I just want to see the things that apply to me, I can very quickly look at just those corporate assets. And from that point, you see that my list of things to do gets very, very small. The things that we are seeing, and what we're showing you here is you can very quickly pick out malicious devices. You can pick out misconfigured devices. You can pick out device movement of those things that actually belong to you. And you can start to see things that are off network that shouldn't be off network. They really should be on your network.
So I can do asset management with this. I like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So one of the things that we have found that a lot of folks, particularly in those distributed environments, you've got a large enterprise, and maybe they don't. You have customers that don't necessarily want to wait for IT to buy them and configure a network printer. So what do? They go run out to Best Buy and they go buy a printer, or they go buy an access point, not recognizing that, hey, they just plugged in this access point or this printer, and lo and behold, they've just exposed their enterprise to a threat. And so what we have done is started to pick out things like wired to wireless bridging devices. And since this is on my corporate network, it's definitely something that I want to drill into. Here, what I'm showing you is simply a few access points that we have configured in our Boston office, but I think this sort of, hammers a point home of what you can actually see when someone plugs in that access point and it actually starts to get an IP address associated with it.
I will say we know the folks over at Hack5, and I think they'd be tickled pink that your tool recognizes their tool. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we know and love the Hack5 folks too. And while we didn't do it specifically for their benefit, we did have a smile on our face when we were making this. So all said, from this point, I can start to show you things like bridge network hosts. So not only am I showing you the wireless access point of this particular device, but I can also show you the other side of that device that's actually in the environment. So I can show you things like the operating system, of course, its IP address, and this really cool thing lets me see what this device really is, right? So today, everyone walks around with these devices, and devices can have different personas, right? It can be a Bluetooth device. You can have that turned on. It can be a wireless client. It can also be serving up Wi-Fi. It could also be doing things like moving through your network. So with this, all this information that we're gathering, we're tracking all these devices, and we can very quickly get a sense of the device's entire persona, not just that it's a network host and not just that it's an access point, but also that there are client devices that may have been connected to this particular device, or that this device is also serving up weak Wi-Fi, things like that. And what's one of the really cool things that I really love about this is that I can actually go back in time with this system. So even if I do have an access point out there and maybe it's gone away, I can very quickly go back to a point in the past and say, what was on this that I should be concerned about? Which of my client devices attached to this access point, and which ones that I don't own attached to this access point as well, right?
That history feature, I like that. The ability to step back and say, okay, I know you disconnected it, but I need to know what may have been compromised in the time that it was connected to my network. Now, how is it getting this? Is it just probing the devices? Is it listening passively? What are you using to collect all this information?
Well, that's a great question. And so on the wireless side, we are literally just passively probing. And what that's doing is essentially just listening in the airspace. Our devices, I'm going to pull out my phone here. Our devices actually are very lonely, needy creatures, and they always want to be connected, and they're always want to talk and speak to somebody. It just so happens that everyone can hear it when these things are out there asking to be connected. And so what we're picking up are all those, please connect to me, or hey, I'm connected over here. Do you want me to connect someplace else? We can see all of that, and we pull that back in, and we can flight follow those devices over time.
Yolanda, how customizable is this? If I wanted to design a custom threat screen so that it could, say, track a device, handing off to different segments of the network. So, for example, someone has a phone and it's associating with different IPs as the person moves through my campus. Can I set that up, or do I have to drill down individually and look for that device?
So the way I would tackle that problem is through our alerts engine. And we actually have a highly customizable alerts engine. If there was a particular client device that I was concerned about, I would basically have you build an alert that says, go find this particular device, if and when this particular device comes online, and when that device actually attaches itself to my network, start tracking it, or rather not start tracking it, alert me, and let me know every place it moves. So if I were to create a new rule, I could say, let's say, bad Apple, since most of us here are using Apple devices. And I can very quickly say, let me know when right? And so from that point, I can choose to select either all my sensors or a subset of my sensors. And if and when that device is seen by those sensors, I'll get an alert, and it can very quickly say, Yolanda came in, the Boston sensor saw her, and then when she traveled to San Francisco, the San Francisco sensor saw her as well.
Oh, that's too cool. But I could see that being incredibly creepy. Oh, I like this. Oh my goodness.
And it's just that simple, right? And if I want to get an email alert, and it's very soon in the future we'll be doing SMS alerts as well, I can have it, just let me know when this offending device or this suspicious device becomes known again, or comes online and into my airspace again.
All right, Yolanda, I got to bring my co-host back into this conversation, because this is cool stuff. I definitely want to get their impressions on this. Chee, I had a chance to play with Pulse at Black Hat. I absolutely loved it. Did you get any hands-on time, or do you have one in your lab?
No.
Oh.
Could you imagine how much stuff this would find on a university?
On a university,
campus?
I know, right?
Oh
And
my
that's
God.
that's actually what I was thinking when I asked her about that location, the alerts. That would be perfect on a campus to find out as students jump from one part of the campus to the next.
No, I want to track where my dean is.
Okay, this is a tech you want to buy, not a tech that will get you fired episode of TWiET. So let's be careful with that. Lou,
full disclaimer there.
Yeah, full disclaimer. This is an open API, so just know that. Lou, you must have something similar running on the Microsoft campus, right?
Than this?
Oh yeah,
we have something very similar. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Chumley in the chat room, he's calling this ratware, but this is not a rat. I mean, you're not installing anything on a client here. This is just connected to the network, and it's looking for devices that are connected to a network. You must get that, Yolanda. There's always going to be people who think, oh, this is just ratware, right? You're just looking to compromise the security of the people who are connected to the network. But this is an honest-to-goodness network management product.
Absolutely, and to answer your question, we have gotten that question, and you've already answered it for me. But essentially, on the wireless side, we're looking completely passively, and then on the wired side, as another device within the network, we're seeing the same traffic that everyone else sees. When an ARP broadcast goes up, we say, "Oh, hey, there's a new guy. Who are you, new guy?" And then that's about the extent of it. That comes back into our Pulse platform, and then from that point, we can actually give you more intelligence about, is that device something that should be there, particularly for those folks that are far out and far away from headquarters.
Right. And actually, let me get to the opinion of Curtis here, because Curtis, you can give me sort of an executive level view of this problem. I've been reading some of the pushback in the chat room saying, wait a minute, I just want to be able to do my work without worrying about my administrator spying on what I'm doing. But we're talking about a product that's going to go into an enterprise network. And if you're connected to an enterprise network, you just assume that you have no privacy, right? I mean, we've come to that point where we realize something you do on someone else's network is not private.
Well, I think in most enterprises, you now have something in the employee handbook, some part of the agreement between employee and organization that says explicitly that whatever you do on the network is open to constant scrutiny, and that there are consequences if you do something you shouldn't do. So the idea that you're going to be upset because someone is looking at your traffic on the enterprise network tells me that you really ought to not be doing that on the enterprise network. And I think most executives would feel the same. I mean, if you want to, catch up on the sports scores on your lunch hour, that's fine. But if you want to seriously go off the reservation, I mean, that's why God made Starbucks.
Right, exactly. And Yolanda, we've got some good questions from JJ to the 4884. He's a longtime member of our chat room. First, he wants to know if Pwnie Express, if Pulse can detect if someone's using a VPN. And secondly, wants to know if is this a community-supported product? Do you allow for open source usage on any platform?
Okay, so to answer your first question, I'd say, can you say the question again? I'm sorry.
So can you detect a VPN tunnel? When a VPN tunnel goes up, will this give you a warning that a VPN tunnel has turned on?
So what we won't do is say there's a VPN tunnel that's going on, but we will see when the client obtains an IP address on that network. And so from that point, we can actually let you know that there are clients connected to the network.
Okay, okay, got it. All right, and then the second part is, as far as the community that develops for this, is it just Pwnie Express, or are you sort of inviting other developers to come in and add modules to the platform?
So today it's just us, but if there are people that are interested in helping us, and we're looking at doing things like threat sharing and intel sharing as part of our roadmap to allow people to say, hey, I've got this weird device. I don't really know what precisely it is, but hey, can someone develop a rule, or hey, I've got this rule for it, just in case someone wants to take advantage of it. We are looking at developing a rule sharing engine that allows everyone to take advantage of this as well in the future.
All right, fantastic. Chee, I want to throw this back over to you, because we can geek out about this technology all that we want, but there are other solutions out there that will do something like this. What do you find unique about the Pwnie Express solution versus some of the other tools you've had go through your lab?
Well, a lot of it's about correlation, being able to go and correlate between what's happening on the wired and wireless side. If I remember right, Pwnie Express is also a heck of a lot less expensive than some of the really high-end pieces. I want to say like case and things like that. We did a lot of work with identity management. Some of the features are there, but for some reason or another, identity management that had this type of effect in there died as a market. It doesn't even exist anymore in the buzzwords. So the answer is, yeah, there's a few out there. They're all really expensive, and they're designed more for NOC type operations rather than for small to medium size to enterprise.
And I love the fact that this does remote branches so well, because honestly, that's what I'm worried about. Because if I'm going to allow remote branches into my network, it's very difficult for me to make sure that they've been maintaining security policy. Speaking of expense, Yolanda, my audience will not forgive me if I don't ask you the golden question, which is pricing. So if they were looking right now at perhaps adding this to their end of fiscal year 2015-2016 budget, what would they need left in their budget to be able to make that happen?
Well, if your listeners were able to spare $100 a month, they could get the analytic software as well as the sensor in their environment. So it is $100 per sensor per month. If they were able to spare $200 per sensor per month, they could get this big guy here, and that also includes the open VAS scanning as well on this guy. So
actually, that's perfect, because then they can try it out. They'd actually have data to bring to their execs and say, hey, look, these are the kind of metrics that we get from this device. This should become a regular part of our budget.
Absolutely.
I like that. Yolanda Smith, product manager over at Pwnie Express. Actually, I'm going to call her product goddess. I think, I know it's Friday. I'm not supposed to mess with your title, but that works for me. Could you we're going to have you back on the show, because this blew me away. And I want to put you next to a couple of other tools that we're bringing into the TWiET Riot. But if they wanted to find out right now, after the show ends, where they go to read up about Pwnie Express, where they can demo Pulse, and where they can find out what those sensors do, where should they go?
Well, they should start with www.pwnieexpress.com. That's PWNIE. There we go. .com. And from that point, if you want a demo, we can actually show you a 2-minute demo video. Or if you want to reach out to talk to yours truly, you could actually sign up for a demo there. If you actually do want to talk to me, feel free to either reach me at Twitter at ysmithnd, or you can reach out to me directly at Yolanda@pwnieexpress.com.
Yolanda, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for spending the time with us and for sharing this tech. I was blown away at Black Hat DEF CON. I will be at Black Hat DEF CON again this year. Will Pwnie Express be back?
Oh, we'll be there, and we can't wait to see you guys.
All right, we'll do another segment at your booth, so have something warm and ready to surprise the TWiET.
Oh, don't you worry about that part.
Again, Yolanda Smith, product manager over at Pwnie Express. We thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Well, folks, you have done it again. You've used up another hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 remote sensors. I want to thank my co-hosts for being here. I couldn't do the show without them. They are the brains. They are the charm. They are the connections to the real world that feed you the enterprise goodness. Let's start with you, Chee. I know you've got a mini maker fair going on in Honolulu. Could you tell the folks where they can find you over the next week or so?
Hopefully, after Mini Maker Fair, I'm going to go and become comatose.
Okay. So you'll find him in his bed in a coma.
But anyway, tomorrow you'll find me between 12 noon and 5 p.m. I will be running 4 classes. Unfortunately, even though each class has 20 seats in it, according to Eventbrite, those 80 seats sold out in 1 hour.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's all right. So
I guess
sorry.
I need a bigger venue.
Well, are you going to stream it at all? Can we catch you online?
I've got just too much junk to carry.
Well, if you're not there, you missed it, but you'll get them next time. Also, we've got Lou Maresca, again, senior lead over at Microsoft. Lou, I love the episodes where all 4 of us can be on at the same time. It's good to see your smiling face. Of course, Lou Maresca was my co-host on Coding 101. He's been on several of the shows on the TWiET TV network, from TNT to TWiET to Know How. Could you please tell the folks where they can find you and your good work?
Absolutely. You can always find me on Twitter at LouMM. And, of course, you could find all my work at MicrosoftCRM.com and check out our server-side sync product, our scalable sync service that we have. That's my stuff. So check it out, and just MicrosoftCRM.com.
And, of course, to round out our group, we've got Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, you've had some absolutely fantastic analysis, including a program that you did on the Brexit, what it means to technology. If they wanted to find out about your deeper analysis that you do off of TWiET, where can they go?
Well, Padre, I'm writing pretty much every day at informationweek.com. Have the weekly show that we do on Fridays, just a little bit before TWiET, Information Week Live. We've got some new programs that we're putting together, and I've got some, I think, pretty good stories coming up. I spent some time yesterday with some of the fathers of software quality, talking about quality and security and the industrial Internet of Things. We're going to have some pieces about those coming up in the next week. I'm also playing with some new pieces of social networking. I just got my first Snapchat channel going and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So look for me around the various social networks. Always find me at informationweek.com, and I try to tell people about what I'm doing on Twitter. You can find me right down there.
Curtis, Lou, Chee, thank you again, gentlemen. It is always a pleasure and an honor. I'll see you again next week. Also, hopefully I will see you. That's right, our loyal viewer, our loyal listener, the person who comes back each and every single week for your dosage of enterprise goodness. We want to make it a little bit easier for you to get all of the TWiET that you desire. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/TWiET. That's TWiET. There you'll find all of our back episodes, along with the notes of the links that we cover when we go through the various stories of our rundown. You'll also find some drop-downs so you can subscribe. If you want the audio version in your phone so you can listen on the way to work. If you want a video version on a tablet so you can watch us on the break. If you want a high-definition video version automatically downloaded to your laptop or your desktop, your Mac or your PC, that's where you can go and get TWiET on time. Also, don't forget that you can find me on Twitter. If you want to converse with me, if you want to tell me that you want a future guest, a future topic covered on the show, just go to twitter.com/PadreSJ. You'll also find out what I'm doing when I'm not creating content for the TWiET TV network, which more often than not is just goofing around. Please join me again, twitter.com/PadreSJ. Don't forget that we do this show live every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, live.twit.tv. If you join us online, you can see the pre-show, the post-show, and everything in between, all the stuff that gets cut out of the final edit. And as long as you're watching live, why not join us live in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. It's it's part of the experiment that is TWiET TV. Also, thanks to everyone here who makes this show possible, to Chee, my absolutely fantastic producer, to Kevin, my TD. Wait, Kevin, if you could tell the folks what it is that you do here at TWiET.
I edit and I eat snacks.
Okay, so this is the part of the show where we have to ask Kevin a question. Kevin, if you could, for the top of the $10,000 pyramid, could you explain to me how many layers there are in the OSI model?
4.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The answer was Q, the letter Q. We'll get you again next time, Kevin. Thank you.
I'll have to ask 007.
Also, thanks to Lisa and Leo for letting us do this show, and everyone else, including Kara and Alex, who have been peanut gallerying me the entire show. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, saying, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiET.